Have you ever found yourself searching online for something important, maybe even prescription medication,
Oh, sure.
and seen prices that seem just, well, unbelievably low?
It's so tempting, right? Especially when healthcare costs what it does.
Definitely. You see that deal and you think, wow, could it really be that much cheaper?
Exactly. But then, that little voice pops up. How do I actually know if this online seller is, legitimate? Is it safe?
That's the crucial question. That impulse to find value, it's universal. We all do it.
Right.
But with medication, the stakes are just so incredibly high.
Yeah.
And navigating these online pharmacies, well, it adds this whole layer of risk. It's really important to understand that.
Absolutely. And that exact scenario, that's what's driving our deep dive today. We're looking at a study that specifically asked, well, how good are people, particularly young, educated internet users, at spotting the really obvious red flags?
Yeah, the signs that scream danger on an untrustworthy online pharmacy, even when they're right there in plain sight.
Mm-hmm. So the source we're digging into, tell us about that. Okay, so this was published back in 2010. It's in the Journal of Medical Internet Research. And the title gets right to the point. Dirt cheap and without prescription. How susceptible are young U.S. consumers to purchasing drugs from rogue internet pharmacies?
Dirt cheap and without prescription definitely grabs your attention.
Us?
So our mission here is basically to unpack what this study found, understand what it tells us about how well young adults evaluate these sites, what the bigger challenges are for all of us online, and really importantly, what you listening need to know to stay safe.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's get into the research itself. How did they actually set this study up?
Well, they took a really practical approach. Instead of just asking people about sites they might have seen, they wanted to test reactions directly. So they actually went ahead and created 2 fake online pharmacy websites just for this study.
Ah, okay. Creating their own sites, that gives them control. Were these super slick, convincing fakes?
Actually, no, the opposite. They were intentionally modeled after real, known, dangerous online sellers. Yeah, and they were packed, absolutely packed, with features that are widely recognized signs of being untrustworthy. And critically, they included basically none of the things the FDA says you should look for in a safe pharmacy. They were deliberately loaded with red flags.
Wow, okay. So red flag bonanzas, as you might say.
That's a good way to put it, yeah. Designed to look unsafe.
Got it. So what did they ask the participants to do with these red flag bonanzas?
Right, so they gave them a scenario. Participants were told they needed a month's supply of this made-up drug called Biazine.
Biazine, okay. Fake drugs, so no one had biases.
Exactly. And they told them Biazine cost $165 at their local pharmacy. Then they sent them to check the price on the 2 fake sites. Pharmacy A had it for $37.99.
Whoa, big difference.
Huge difference. Pharmacy B was $57.60, still way cheaper. After looking at each site, they had to rate how good or, trustworthy the pharmacy seemed. That was on a 0 to 10 scale.
Okay.
And for Pharmacy B, the slightly more expensive fake one, they also had to explain why they thought the price might be so low.
Interesting. And who are the people taking part in this?
He's a pretty large group, almost 2,000 undergraduate students. This was at a U.S. university, and the study ran between 2005 and 2008.
Okay, so college students.
Mostly young.
Yeah, vast majority were young. About 77% were under 22. And interestingly, quite a chunk, 44%, were actually studying in health-related fields.
Health fields. So maybe more aware.
You'd think so. And the researchers describe them as generally internet savvy for that time period, comfortable online.
Right. So young, college-educated, nearly half studying health, comfortable online. Intuitively, you'd expect this group to be pretty decent at spotting a scam, especially one designed with obvious red flags.
You absolutely would.
So here's where it gets really interesting, I bet. What did the study actually find? How did they rate these clearly dodgy sites?
Yeah, this is the core finding, and it's pretty surprising. Despite these websites being intentionally designed to look bad, loaded with danger signs, a significant number of these students rated them quite favorably. How significant? What are we talking about?
Okay, so for Pharmacy A, that was the really cheap one, $37.99, full 50%. Half the students who looked at it gave it a rating of 5 or higher on that 10-point scale.
F. For the site designed to scream danger. Wow.
Yeah. And for Pharmacy B, the $57.60 one, it was 37%. Still over a third gave it a 5 or higher.
So a huge chunk of people looking at sites practically waving red flags thought they were Well, at least okay.
Yeah.
Or maybe even good. That seems really counterintuitive.
It really does. And, looking at the other end, only about a quarter, 25% for A, 17% for B, gave those really low ratings, like 1 or 0, which would mean they clearly saw it as very bad or totally untrustworthy.
So the majority weren't strongly negative. Those favorable ratings are, striking.
They really are.
Okay, that's alarming just based on how they perceive the sites.
Yeah.
But the study went further, didn't it? It asked about what they might actually do, like recommending them.
Absolutely. They asked, would you recommend these sites to friends or family? And the results here are, well, maybe even more surprising. Around 22% of students said they would recommend Pharmacy A.
The really chief red flag-filled one.
Yep. And for Pharmacy B, about 10% said they'd recommend it.
Recommend sites that, even if they rated them okay-ish, were full of warning signs.
That's what the data showed. And they dug even deeper. They asked if people should be advised to buy drugs from places like these.
Oh, wow.
Shockingly, about 16% of the students actually thought, yes, people should be advised to use these types of clearly unsafe pharmacies to get cheaper drugs.
16%. Thought recommending a site designed to be a red flag bonanza was actually good advice. That number feels, well, it feels pretty significant and really quite concerning.
It is. I mean, the majority, 62%, did say people should be warned against using them, which is good.
Right.
But that 16% suggesting people should be advised to use them, that's a critical finding. It shows how easily that perceived value, that low price, might just override obvious risks for, well, a substantial chunk of people.
Wow. Okay, given these sites were so clearly designed to look untrustworthy, why did so many people apparently not see it or rate them favorably or even recommend them? You mentioned they asked for reasons for the low price at Pharmacy B. Does that give us any clues?
It does, yeah. That gives us some insight into the thinking process. So for Pharmacy B, they asked, why do you think the price is so low? The top reasons people gave were 60% said few regulations,
Okay.
and 56.7% said low operation costs.
Those sound kind of plausible, almost neutral explanations someone might come up with to make sense of it.
Exactly. And there were others too, like 47.5% cited low drug quality. That's more negative.
Right.
But then you had 37.1% mentioning advertising revenue, 34.6% saying comparison shopping pressure, 30.3% high sales volume, and even 30% thinking maybe they were selling customer information.
So a real mix of reasons, some negative, some more neutral or business related.
Yeah.
How did the type of reason they gave connect to how they rated the pharmacy? Was there a link?
Yes, a strong one. And this is a really key mechanism the study uncovered. Students who gave what the researchers classified as negative reasons for the low price, lack of regulation, low quality drugs, selling your info.
The scary stuff.
Right, the scary stuff. Those students were much more likely to rate the pharmacy poorly. Makes sense.
Okay.
But conversely, those who cited the more neutral reasons, things like low operating costs, ad revenue, high volume, comparison shopping, they were significantly more likely to rate the pharmacy favorably.
So it's like they were finding a non-threatening explanation for the cheap price.
It looks that way. It seems people use these seemingly logical, neutral business explanations to sort of rationalize or justify the low price, and in doing that, they maybe overlooked or downplayed the obvious danger signs. Whereas the people who immediately thought of negative reasons, they were appropriately suspicious.
Yeah, that's a fascinating insight into how we process this stuff online, isn't it? We build these little narratives to explain the deal we're seeing.
Absolutely.
Was there anything else surprising about who was better or worse at judging these sites? Any particular groups?
Yes, and this was really quite counterintuitive. After they controlled for other factors like, what they were studying, their age, education level, the study found something unexpected.
Go on.
Students who said they used general internet searches for their own health decisions, or even to help other people make health decisions.
Okay, the active health searchers.
Right. They actually had worse judgment scores when evaluating these fake pharmacies compared to students who didn't use the internet that way for health info.
Wait, hang on. So using the internet more for health stuff didn't make you better at spotting a bad source in this test. It maybe made you more vulnerable.
That's what this specific finding suggests.
Yeah. That kind of flies in the face of what you'd assume. More practice should make you better, right?
You'd think so. It definitely complicates the picture. Now, the researchers were careful to point out this was an exploratory finding, not something they hypothesized beforehand. And the effect size was small, so it really needs more research. But it raises this fascinating possibility. Maybe just being online looking for health info a lot doesn't automatically give you the critical skills to spot these rogue operators.
Or maybe the impulse to find information quickly or to help someone else find a deal sometimes overrides that careful checking.
That could be part of it, too. It's a really interesting wrinkle.
It is, and it's a critical message for, well, pretty much anyone who uses the internet for health advice or looking for medications. Okay, so we've established that even supposedly savvy users can be quite vulnerable to these sites, even when the red flags are obvious. Let's talk about the real-world impact. Why does this actually matter so much? What are the dangers?
The dangers are profound. I mean, potentially life-threatening. The source study spells them out very clearly. If you order from a rogue site, you could get drugs that are counterfeit fake.
Right.
Or contaminated, impure, maybe just way past their expiration date and totally ineffective.
And getting the wrong drug altogether or the wrong dose, that must be a huge risk too.
Yeah. Absolutely enormous. You might get completely the wrong medication or the wrong strength of the right one. These drugs, they could have unknown ingredients in them. They might be made in, totally substandard, maybe even unsanitary conditions.
Well.
And critically, if there's no valid prescription involved, no doctor overseeing things, you might take a medication that's completely wrong for your actual health condition. Or maybe it interacts dangerously with other medicines you're already taking.
That's terrifying. And buying controlled substances without authorization, that's obviously illegal and dangerous. What about the self-treatment aspect?
That's another major danger they highlighted. Relying on these dodgy sites for self-diagnosis or maybe misrepresenting your health history just to get a drug without a proper prescription.
Yeah.
That can lead to serious delays in getting the right medical care. It could cause complications down the line, and it can really damage that essential trust relationship you have with your actual doctor.
So the risks are incredibly real. Everything from getting useless pills to, serious harm or dangerous drug interactions.
Yeah.
Given how bad the consequences can be, why is it so darn difficult to just shut these rogue pharmacies down?
Yeah, it's a huge challenge. The study points out several big reasons. A major one is just geography. Many of these operations, they're based outside the U.S.
Jurisdiction issues.
Exactly. Makes it incredibly difficult for U.S. regulators to, legally pursue them or force them to shut down. There are also some complexities around, say, doctors licensed in one state prescribing online to patients in another, although, frankly, the really rogue sites often just skip the whole prescription thing anyway.
Right.
And maybe the trickiest part now is the rise of what they call ephemeral websites.
Ephemeral, meaning short-lived.
Exactly. Sites promoted through spam emails or shady links. They pop up, make some quick sales, and then just disappear, only to reappear later under a different name, a different web address. It's like a constant game of digital whack-a-mole for law enforcement trying to track them.
It sounds exhausting. Like regulators are always one step behind.
Yeah.
Are there efforts being made, though? What is being done to try and fight this?
Oh, definitely. Various groups are involved. The FDA in the U.S., for instance, they've had an Internet Drug Sales Action Plan for a long time. That involves things like public education, trying to identify and verify legitimate online pharmacies, working internationally, and taking action like sending out cyber letters to suspicious sellers.
So they do have some teeth.
They do. The FDA has legal authority against illegal sales of adulterated, misbranded, or counterfeit drugs.
Okay. Are there non-government groups involved too?
Yes, and this is important for consumers. The National Association of Boards of Pharmacy, the NABP, they created an accreditation program. It's called VIPPS, Verified Internet Pharmacy Practice Sites.
VIPPS.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's basically a seal of approval consumers can look for to see if an online pharmacy meets certain safety and legitimacy standards. States also have prescription drug monitoring programs, but those are mostly focused on curbing prescription drug abuse within the U.S., so they don't usually catch the foreign online pharmacies.
And since it's a global problem, I guess international teamwork is pretty crucial.
Absolutely essential. You have organizations like Interpol, the WHO, coordinating these big international crackdowns. Operation Pangea is a well-known example. Yeah, it's involved dozens of countries working together over the years to identify and dismantle networks selling illegal medicines online, shutting down thousands of websites. So efforts are definitely happening, but the scale of the problem and how fast these criminals adapt, it makes it a really tough, ongoing battle.
That really puts the challenge into perspective. Okay, so let's bring it back to the individual. What can you actually do? If you find yourself looking online for medication, what are the concrete signs, the things that tell you this site is probably okay versus danger, stay away?
Right, and this is where the study and the FDA guidance it mentions give really practical advice. You need to look for specific positive signs for a trustworthy pharmacy. Key things are a physical location in the United States,
Okay, U.S.-based.
confirmation that it's licensed by a state board of pharmacy, and they should provide that information, let you verify it. They need to give you complete contact information, especially a phone number where you can actually talk to a licensed pharmacist.
You talk to a real person, a pharmacist.
Got it. Crucially, they must require a valid prescription from your licensed healthcare provider before they'll dispense any prescription medication. No prescription, no drugs.
That seems like a big one. No shortcuts on the prescription. Okay, so those are the good signs. What about the glaring red flags? The signs that scream rogue operation?
The FDA warnings are pretty clear here. Big red flags include sites that don't provide a working phone number or any way to talk to staff. Prices that are just dramatically lower than anywhere else. Remember, the study showed how tempting but misleading that can be.
Yeah, that low price lure.
Exactly. And critically, any site that doesn't require a valid prescription, or maybe even worse, offers to give you a prescription just based on filling out some online questionnaire. Huge red flag.
Okay. Any others maybe from the fake sites in the study?
Yeah, drawing from how those fake sites were built, being located outside the U.S., only offering contact through email, FAX, or maybe an online form, no real person, using misleading statements or really suspicious disclaimers, making health claims that seem too good to be true or aren't supported, asking for way too much personal information that isn't related to a prescription.
Yeah.
And even just the basics, like lots of typos, bad grammar, or a website that just looks generally unprofessional or thrown together. Remember, the study authors specifically said their fake sites had below average surface credibility, partly because of these visual cues.
Right, so it's a whole package deal you need to look at. The physical presence, the licensing, can you talk to someone? Do they need a real prescription? And does it even look professional and trustworthy? It's definitely not just about the price.
Exactly right. You have to look past the price tag and really scrutinize all those other legitimacy signals.
Okay, we've covered the study's really surprising findings, the very real dangers, the efforts to fight back against these sites. It's also important, though, to put the study itself in context. Like any research, it had limitations, right?
Oh, absolutely. And the researchers were very upfront about them. A key one we touched on is that the fake websites they created, they had below average surface credibility.
Meaning they weren't super convincing fakes.
Right. They weren't designed to be these highly polished, sophisticated mimics that could fool even a really careful user. And the authors themselves said, look, rogue sites that are better at hiding their untrustworthy features, that look more professional, they'd probably fool an even higher percentage of people than we saw in the study.
So the vulnerability we saw in the study, it might actually be an underestimate of the real problem out there where the bad guys are constantly trying to look more legit.
That's a really crucial takeaway, yes. Another limitation is the sample they used. It was a convenient sample, college students at one university.
Right.
So while they were chosen partly because they're active internet users, their specific age, education level, maybe their background, it means the findings might not perfectly apply to everyone.
Like maybe older people or less educated people might react differently.
Exactly. This study mentioned that, maybe populations with less internet experience could be more vulnerable in some ways. But they also speculated that older people might potentially be more cautious, maybe just due to more life experience with advertising and media in general. So it's complex. You'd need more research across different groups.
So we can't just assume these findings apply exactly the same way to everybody. Any other limitations worth noting?
Yeah, one more is that certain findings, like that really counterintuitive link between using the internet for health info and having worse judgment on these fake sites, that was exploratory. It wasn't a hypothesis they started out testing. It just kind of emerged from the data analysis. And the authors rightly point out findings like that. They really need more research specifically designed to investigate that relationship before we can say for sure if it's a general trend or just something specific to this study's context.
Okay. So some of those really fascinating connections they found are more like starting points for future questions, not necessarily definitive answers about all internet health users.
Precisely. Understanding those limits helps us interpret the findings accurately. We can still see their significance, but we see the boundaries too.
Okay. This deep dive has been, well, incredibly revealing. If there's one single, most important takeaway you want listeners to walk away with today, what is it?
I think the core message really is a kind of wake-up call. It's that even among people we might think are savvy, young, educated, online all the time, there's a significant and maybe underestimated vulnerability to these rogue online pharmacies.
Yeah.
The clear signs of danger, even when there are multiple obvious intentional signs, They often get missed or ignored or maybe rationalized away. And a big reason seems to be just how powerful that lure of a low price really is.
It really forces you to pause and think about your own habits online, doesn't it? How careful are you, really, when you're searching for health information or maybe looking for medication deals? Do you automatically click on the lowest price? Do you actually know that checklist of signs separating a safe pharmacy from a dangerous one?
It's definitely a prompt for some real self-reflection on how we navigate the digital world for something as critical as our health.
Absolutely.
Oh.
And maybe it leaves you with this final thought to chew on, given how quickly these rogue websites adapt, how they get better at looking legitimate, and considering that, well, that human desire for a good deal isn't going away.
Mm-hmm.
How can consumer education and online safety efforts possibly keep pace in this constantly changing digital landscape?
It's a million-dollar question, isn't it?